Thanks for tuning into my second conservation conversation, where I interview people about their careers fighting climate change and protecting nature. Today, I'm interviewing Kathy Hacker, an environmental educator from Southern California. Without further ado, let's get into the interview. Firstly, can you introduce yourself and give a brief explanation of your current job?
Yeah, my name is Kathy Hacker, and I work in environmental education consulting. And my company is called BCK Programs. And we started it about 6.5 years ago. I started it with two partners. We're going into our 7th year. And we work with kids in elementary school, middle school, and high school. And we do a wide range of environmental education programs. So some of the programs that we're working on right now are things like climate action, where we'll work with a classroom or even a grade level, and then we'll go through the different topics that would be included in a city's climate action plan. So we'll do like a short unit on waste diversion, we'll do a short unit on air pollution, a unit on water conservation and clean energy. And then at the end of it, we'll have the students kind of identify maybe some issues going on at their school, and then different things, different solutions that they could put into place to address those issues that they identified. We're also doing a lot of waste diversion programs. And so school districts are calling us now because there's some legislation in California that is requiring school districts to divert not only their recycling, but their food waste as well. And so we're finding in a lot of school districts, they have like no recycling systems in place whatsoever, especially in the lunch area. Kids will, go to discard their waste and their only option is a garbage can. and in our minds as environmentalists, that's so outdated. I mean, recycling goes back decades. So we're going in, we'll work with a group of students, we'll do a waste audit, we'll figure out how much of that waste can be diverted from the landfill and actually go to organics recycling or traditional recycling, and then put those systems into place with students. And actually, it's pretty fascinating data when we look at it, because we're finding, 10% or less of the food waste really should be destined for the landfill and 90% being diverted elsewhere and being recycled. So that's pretty cool to be working in that area. And then the other area that we specialize in is watershed protection. And that's really helping cities comply with their stormwater pollution prevention efforts in their communities. And that is a program near and dear to my heart because it goes back more to my technical training and background. But we will work with students again on their campus to identify potential pollutants and think of ways and put into place ways that they can prevent the pollution. So it's all about really tackling real life issues, tackling issues that are happening on kids' school campuses. And it's a really great way to connect students with what they can do themselves today. All of the simple little actions they can do that will help make a difference.
That's really cool. So, my next question is, what sparked your interest in conservation or the environment?
This is a really good question. I was trying to think, what was that spark? And I settled on just the influence I had when I was in high school in the 90s. I remember being part of the environmental club, and after school, we'd drag around the recycle bins and get all the paper recycling from the classrooms. But my dad also was a big influence at that time. He was always a conservationist. His motivations were a little bit different. They weren't environmentally motivated. He grew up in the 40s and 50s where you conserved your resources to conserve your resources because they were limited, especially talking about money. So even though it was a little bit different, it still kind of led to the same practices. And he worked at a winery that was at the forefront. They were pioneering in sustainable practices. And so through seeing what he did at work, and then I ended up working there a little bit too, I was just surrounded and inspired by sustainability and really choosing that lifestyle.
Awesome. So my next question is, did you study environmental sciences or something similar in college or as part of an advanced degree?
I did. I have a bachelor's of science in environmental engineering from Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo.
How did you choose what to study?
Okay, so that was not a clear path. I know that high school students today, it's pretty typical on your college application to declare your major, but back in the 90s, it wasn't necessarily that common. But for Cal Poly, you did have to declare your major. And so having no idea what I wanted to study, I decided to think about the subject I was either the most interested in or that I felt I was the strongest at. And for me, that was math. And so I entered Cal Poly as a math major, knowing that I probably wasn't going to follow through and major in math, that I was going to change my major. But once I was there, I had to really look at what the course offerings were and what my options were. And it came down to maybe environmental science direction or environmental engineering direction. And the difference for me was that I was less comfortable in the sciences with all of the, biology and terminology. And I was just really intimidated by that route and still more comfortable with the numbers route. And so at that point, I decided to major in environmental engineering. And at Cal Poly, I'm not sure if the program's changed. It probably has because that was a long time ago. But in that major, it exposed me to a lot of different types of engineering. So I got a lot of background in civil and mechanical and chemical and electrical, like you name it, I studied it. So I felt like it was a good choice in the end.
What was your career path after college?
So after college, I got a job in Orange County at a consulting firm, and we did environmental remediation. So a lot of our clients were like refineries or gas stations in Los Angeles and even Los Angeles Unified School District. And it was our job to go to these properties, these locations where there had been, either toxic chemical disposal or spills, but the, land and groundwater was contaminated. And so we'd go out, and one of my main jobs was to do groundwater monitoring at these sites. And so I would collect the groundwater from wells that had been dug and sent it out to the lab for testing. And then we'd get the results and have to write the report of the slew of toxic chemicals that were in the water. And so it wasn't something that I felt was going to be a long-term position for me. And I was in Orange County, wanted to move down to San Diego. So I ended up my next job in the engineering field was with a civil engineering consulting company down in San Diego. And they really did work for developers. So basically developers would have this, large pristine piece of land that they wanted to put a subdivision or a commercial complex on. And we would do all of the plans for the grading and whatnot, all of that. And then my department was in water resources. And so I did a number of hydraulic and hydrologic studies to identify the floodplains, and which was required for these developments to happen. But I have to admit, at that point in my career, I felt like I was working for the enemy because I wasn't protecting the environment. I was, working for the people that were essentially destroying the environment. I know there was all kinds of laws and, EIRs, all the different things that they have to go through. But it was not a path that I foresaw. But it was a great place to work. I really enjoyed my time there. After that point, I had the kids and I stayed at home for quite a while. And so that was a little bit of a break in my career. And then when they went to elementary school, I feel like the career path I picked it up again, but in a different way. And so it was more focused on education. It was more focused on volunteering. I started the school garden at the school and ran the garden science program there for a number of years. And that sparked me to take an actual career path in education. So about 7 years ago, right before I started this company, BCK, I went back to school. So I went back to UC San Diego and I got my teaching credential and I got a master's in education. And so after I did that, then I started this company and here we are today. The garden was something completely unexpected for me, and the meaning it did have for me in my life. When I started it was just under a really simple premise. It was, we want to bring the kids out to this outdoor space, but we want them to have something to do, because what I had observed before was that, teachers would bring the students out and then everybody's kind of running around, um, not really with a purpose. And then, they'd be there for 10 minutes and then they'd leave. So we wanted to kind of build a garden science program, and it was really supported a supported idea in the district and especially at the school. And so I don't know, by sheer will, and all of these volunteers started a program. So we were able to locate a science curriculum that we used for K-3. And through a completely volunteer run program, we'd have parents in each of the class, about 3 parents per class would come out once a month and teach a garden lesson to the class. And we would include harvest tasting. It's called Harvest of the Month, but basically in season produce, so kids could try new things. One of my favorite memories is of a parent who said, I was at the grocery store and my kindergartner insisted that I buy the purple cauliflower because they tried it in the garden and had to have it at home. And so just having that kind of feedback from the kids, was really awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool. So my next question is, like, what's the most interesting or exciting thing you've done in your career?
Well, it's interesting that that's the next question, because I do feel like those years in the garden, I did it for about 5 years. And when I, reflect back on everything, I feel like those were the greatest years of my life, that I was able to work with children, work outdoors. And it was a really special time. And without that, I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't have, had that epiphany realization that I wanted to be in education, that I wanted to be an educator. But it does lead again to another interesting thing, is that me, and along with my 2 business partners, we've been passionate about this. All 3 of us started out as parents, as moms who started gardens, who started green programs in our kids' elementary school. And we've been able to create this business for ourselves and this living for ourselves. And so it's not every day that you can say that your full-time job, you kind of made it up out of thin air and you get to do what you're passionate about every single day.
Awesome. So what do you think is the most important thing for people to know about what you do specifically, or about environmentalism and conservation in general?
I think my answer to this one touches a little bit on both. And this is completely my opinion, and from my perspective, it's the little things that people do. And I think, we created a really big issue in the environment. It was through our actions and pollution that we've put ourselves in this place that we're at. But there's little things that we can do. There's behavior changes that we can make that will help solve this problem. I think it's all in our control. And one of the favorite things about my job is to work with students, especially the young ones who are so optimistic and they want to do the right thing. The little kids still want to do the right thing. So I like working with the little kids. We can solve this problem, and working with the youth, it really is inspiring to know that, people created a problem, but people can also fix it.
So do you have any advice for young people, especially high school or college students looking to pursue environmental science or something similar?
Yeah, I think that for young people, I would take advantage of the access to information that is out there on the internet to figure out what it is you want to do. So for environmental programs, look at different universities and locations that you would like to live at or whatnot. Look at these environmental programs, look at the courses that are offered, look at the jobs that people have after, and really hone in on what you're interested in. I felt like I ended up where I did in a way by accident, just because the access to information wasn't as readily available. So if I had to do it over again, and I say this because we had a lot of college visits over, the last year with my own senior, I am so inspired visiting college campuses and looking at these programs and all they have to offer in the environmental science and studies. And I feel like going to college again, but really my advice would just be to take a look at all the different programs and the classes and pick the ones you're the most interested in.
Awesome. So where can we find you or your work online?
So we are at bckprograms.com. And on our website, we just have a list of all of our offerings, all of the different things we do in schools. But hopefully, if you're local, we might be coming into your classroom and have a program at your school.
Thanks for sticking around to the end. If you want to watch my other conservation conversation, in which I interviewed an environmental educator from New Mexico, click here.